Hey guys, welcome to our part one of a four-part series on Adderall. This part we're going to discuss history of Adderall.
So Adderall stems from the stimulant family. So what is a psychomotor stimulant? Well, it's a group of drugs that are often referred to as psychostimulants or sympath- sympathomimetic drugs. So basically, this means that these drugs are just used primarily for stimulating the nervous system. They stimulate the release of norepinephrine and cause sympathetic arousal. The class of psychomotor stimulants has been used for centuries, dating back to 2700 BCE. So if you see these structures here, you can see the similar ring structures here: norepinephrine, epinephrine, dopamine, amphetamine, and all these drugs here.
So about 5,000 years ago, there was a plant known as muhang, or the species is called Ephedra sinaca, and this was a traditional Chinese medicine. And what would happen is the person would grind the leaves of the plant and make it into like a tea. And this was used to treat asthma and common colds. And it has a concentration of ephedrine and pseudoephedrine, which can cause the stimulatory effect. So these are drugs that are kind of heard of around pretty common drugs, and they're usually found in cough syrup or things like that. Um, so this caused an opening of the bronchioles, making it easier to breathe. So someone with a cold was able to be less decongested, or someone with asthma was able to open up their airway so they could breathe better. So the synthesis of ephedrine was done by Chen and Schmid in 1923, and they studied ephedrine's properties on cats and dogs. They found that it was very similar structure to epinephrine, and ephedrine was superior because it was metabolized slower than epinephrine. So epinephrine was basically metabolized almost as soon as it was in the body, whereas ephedrine was like more sustained. And they found that this ephedrine drug had similar properties to epinephrine, so it would stimulate their heart rate and open up their airways and cause a stimulation of the neurons.
So synthesis of amphetamine, which is the main compound in Adderall. So Lazar Idolinu and later by Gordon Ailes were the first to synthesize amphetamine, one of the larger groups of synthetic drugs that include D-amphetamine and L-amphetamine. The drugs are the same chemical structure but mirror images of each other. The mixture of these isomers are simply called amphetamine. So if you look at um, these images here, you can see the similar in structure, and yeah, as we said earlier, they're just mirror images of one another, and then together they're just called amphetamine. So amphetamines and society. So amphetamine was sold under the trade name as Benzedrine. It was sold as an inhaler to treat sinus congestion. That's a typo. Or as a pill to treat mild depression, seasickness, Parkinson's, and narcolepsy. Benzedrine had unrestricted sales until 1939 when it began to. So basically, they began to put restrictions on how you can obtain the drug. This required individuals to have prescriptions, which eliminated over the counter selling. So they saw sales skyrocket, and Benzedrine became a common energy drug. It became used in like the workforce and academics. It helped induce alertness and brain activity.
So a common use of amphetamine was during warfare. So in the picture to the right here, you can see these are German soldiers in the war. They were often given amphetamine to stay awake and to cover like large amounts of territory and take cities over short periods of time. So they're often referred to as like stormtroopers. So they would just basically just storm houses and had almost like this unlimited source of energy. And a lot of times these soldiers were under the influence of amphetamine. Here on the left, you have a picture of pilots. So a lot of times pilots were given amphetamine to stay awake for long amounts of time. So they were on a lot of times they were on long missions that were far away from bases and stuff like that. So they would take amphetamine to stay awake. And even in the modern warfare in the middle here, even in the Gulf War, some soldiers would take amphetamine just to stay alert and stay more focused. So here from this we have the induction of Adderall, and basically Adderall is composed of amphetamines. So eventually, they needed to control the use of amphetamines because they found that during the 70s and 80s, that 70s and 80s, these people were using a lot more of the drug, and people started to become addicted. So physicians needed to come up with a condition that amphetamines could be prescribed for, something that it could be approved for. And one of these conditions was ADHD. So now physicians had a reason to prescribe this drug, along with another condition like narcolepsy as well. So this actually became the major reason for prescribing amphetamines, such as Adderall, other ones such as Vyvanse or methylphenidate like Ritalin. And so pharmaceutical companies, they needed alternative drugs to treat these conditions, and they created drugs such as Adderall. And now these drugs are very widely prescribed to children who are diagnosed ADHD, and almost exclusively that's what this drug is used for to treat. So Adderall here, it has a mixture, a combination of amphetamines. So it has a 3-to-1 mixture of D-amphetamine to L-amphetamine. And the 3 parts D-amphetamine means it's more psychoactive. So the D-amphetamine is the one that is going to have psychoactive properties. And so now we're again to create our series of other 3 podcasts on Adderall. We hope you enjoyed this first podcast. This will be the end of that. Thank you.